I'm not going to apologize for trying to do something while they're doing nothing.
Even if you get sued?
You know, the suit is a stunt. But what I've told Speaker Boehner directly is, if you're really concerned about me taking too many executive actions, why don't you try getting something done through Congress?
We live in a litigious society where it's easy to find a lawyer to file a lawsuit on anything from spilling a hot cup of coffee on yourself, on your lap, and blaming the guy who picked the beans because he knew the end cause was this decision and this would happen, to the criminal filing a lawsuit against the old lady she was robbing, who suffered a shoulder injury because the elderly woman fought back. Okay, so it should be really easy to find someone to take on the President of the United States, right? Welcome back to MidPoint. Partner in the law firm O'Brien & Ryan and our MidPoint legal eagle analyst, if you will, veteran litigator in Philadelphia County and the federal courts, Heather Hansen. Heather, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Ed.
Let's start right out there. It would seem to me as if this would be the great opportunity for a lawyer and a law firm to get involved, a record-breaking suit, history in the making here. But then again, all of a sudden, I seem to think that this law firm would get a call from somebody at 3 in the morning saying, how would you like to see your profits go down and take a tank because no one will ever touch you again? How am I doing so far?
That's one of the reasons that people have given for not one, but two firms to have withdrawn from the case. And that is one of the more likely reasons. You know, some of the liberal pontificators have said that it's because they don't want to lose credibility. I think another big thing that's at play here is how much they're going to get paid for this lawsuit. There's a cap on the amount that they're going to get paid for each stage. And I think perhaps it's going to cost a little bit more money than they had anticipated.
What are we talking about here? The kind of a lawsuit here, and I know this is all just guesswork at this point. We could be talking about months, years, millions of dollars spent to actually go through this, correct?
Absolutely, and that I think is part of the problem. The latest law firm was charging, according to reports, $500 an hour, but to be capped at $350,000. That adds up quickly. I know people hate that lawyers bill by the hour. It isn't the most efficient way, but those hours can add up. And if you can't put the time that you need to for such a difficult, this is going to be a difficult case. It is feasible. Many legal scholars think that it's appropriate, but it's not easy. And so the lawyers have to have the ability to do it. And if they're capped out at a certain amount, that may have affected the law firms staying. And
this would be appealed probably to, I don't know what, the 24th or 25th century, long after we're all gone?
It would be a long, drawn-out process. Many courts have already told different members of Congress in the past that they can't do it. If they were able to do it, it would be fascinating, especially for us lawyers, but it would be long and drawn out and extremely expensive.
Let's move on to Ferguson, Missouri here, because something is going to happen very soon. The Department of Justice will likely not pursue civil rights charges against Darren Wilson, regardless of what some people want. And then there is the possibility that the police chief may be asked to resign, and that may also be going on here. This is a fascinating case, but certainly it's all started by what's supposedly coming out of the grand jury room. Do you believe any of this is actually coming from the grand jury, or is a lot of this just guesswork?
I think a lot of it is guesswork. Bob McCullough, the prosecutor, came forward and said specifically that what we're hearing, he knows for a fact it's not leaks from the grand jury, which would lead one to believe that everything that we're hearing is just untrue. I think that we will likely hear something next week or so, Ed. The way that everything has sort of been set up, I think it's coming. The fact that people are now coming forward and leaking that the Department of Justice is not going to pursue a civil rights allegation is extremely interesting and sort of supports this idea that whatever evidence they have does not support a case against Darren Wilson.
Well, to be on the legal side of this, you have to prove that Darren Wilson, the officer involved, willfully acted to deprive Brown of his rights. Not a reactionary moment, but that he actually knew what he was doing and it was a purposeful move, correct?
That is correct. It is much harder to bring a civil rights violation case than it is to bring a simple case that the grand jury is looking at now. You'll remember from that George Zimmerman case, they're still investigating whether they can do a civil rights case there, and the likelihood is very slim. Willfully means exactly as you said. He had to have intended to deprive Michael Brown of his constitutional rights. That's a tough, tough burden to overcome.
The marijuana laws come up next with the midterms facing us tomorrow, and I think this is a good question to ask because what's happening in Florida, this is an amendment to the Constitution, and there are many people saying that's too far to go because removing that then from the Constitution, if indeed it proves to be the wrong way to go,
right.
would take years and cost a tremendous amount of money. So did Florida sort of jump the gun a little bit here and go at this the wrong way?
I think it's unusual to make it an amendment to the Constitution, and my concern would be, in come 2016, what if you have a president come into power who wants to enforce the federal law against it? You don't know what you may learn about marijuana in those 2 years. Having an amendment to the Constitution is definitely a little bit dangerous. The other issue is the Florida law is written very broadly, and it gives the Department of Health a huge amount of breadth in how they're going to decide this. So that makes the Florida law a little bit more difficult as well. But you've got to remember, we right now have more drug reform laws on the ballots this year than ever before in history. So this is an issue that we're going to continue to see in the future.
Oregon, Alaska, D.C. considering legalizing recreational marijuana. I would guess that you, like so many other, feel that if those pass, the floodgates are wide open around the country.
Absolutely, the floodgates will open. And again, that's well and good unless something happens in the next 2 years to make it something that a new president would be against. Because remember, we still have a federal law that makes it illegal. So it's definitely going to be one of those issues where you've got state and federal laws that differ, and how are they going to be enforced?
Got about a minute and change left here. This is an interesting case that is sort of flying under the radar here. Potential misconduct by an FBI officer, and a tremendous amount of cases here. You could have people actually leaving jail, it would seem, for a long time to come. We're talking about 12 convicts here released from jail. That could be tip of the iceberg, could it not?
It could be the tip of the iceberg. Those are 12 people who have already been convicted. There are also up to 21 people who are facing trial whose cases may be affected by this FBI member's misconduct. Remember, the prosecution, it doesn't mean the prosecution can't pursue these cases later, but it's going to be very difficult if misconduct is shown to overcome this idea that that misconduct had nothing to do with the gathering of evidence in the case. So this could really allow a lot of people out of jail.
About 15 seconds here. Double jeopardy doesn't take course here?
It does not, because the majority of these people have been convicted. So if they've been convicted, double jeopardy doesn't apply. It's also, there's minutia of the law. But that being said, the defendants will argue not only double jeopardy, but a whole number of other things with respect to whatever misconduct. We don't know what the misconduct was. We don't know who the FBI agent was. There's a lot of unanswered questions here that I'm eager to hear about.
We're going to continue to follow the questions. Have you here? We'll answer them as well. Heather Hansen, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Ed. Have a good day.
You too. After the break, something of a shocker as gold takes a dive. And we let the Money Master dive into the reason why. And at 43 minutes after the hour, putting one of America's great frauds front and center on the cover of the new edition of Newsmax magazine. It's all coming up right here on MidPoint.